Have you ever been anxious? Is anxiety something that you're feeling more and more in this world as the world puts pressure on you? Here's some ideas of how you can deal with that anxiety. And what that means to me is to be content and to learn how to be content in what you have. And, you know, in the world that we live in right now, it's full of anxiety, stress, depression. All of those things live at your front door. And especially being a man, you got to provide for a household. You got to make sure your kids are doing right. You got to have a job. You got to have all this. And so many times, I don't even think guys even understand the stress and the pressure that they're under. And it turns into this sense of hopelessness. I think it takes to a sense of hopelessness of where they don't know how to get out of the cycle that they're currently in. And I don't even know if they know how to feel normal because I've lived in that cycle. I've lived in that cycle of where I felt like I was in a bottomless pit and did not know how to get out of it. And a lot of it was because I did not have a regulated nervous system. And to explain a regulated nervous system is to learn how to deal with issues in your life the correct way. Number one, to learn how to deal with your emotions. And the word tells us to be at peace. And I think that word peace goes so far. And I don't even think we understand it. I don't even think that we understand what that word peace means. To me, it would mean to put your trust in what you believe in and let all the other stuff fall apart, or let it all, not fall apart, but fall away. Because I believe that we worry ourselves so much with the monetary things of this life that we put ourselves in a tailspin, man.
So when the word says not to be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You said to put your focus on your belief or your faith. And in that, there is peace that comes with that. Growing up in church, and I know we have this opposite sides of it, um, you often hear pray about it or fast or you don't have enough faith, so you think that I need to pray more, I need to fast more, I need to, and all of those things are good, and those are disciplines to this faith that you should put into practice. In no way do I want to even remotely make it sound like those things aren't necessary,
Mhm.
because they are. But I do believe, in addition to that, finding someone to talk about these things, and I mean from a professional standpoint. So I believe in faith and therapy at the same time.
I don't believe they're opposites. I believe they complement one another. Because if you have somebody that's having a heart attack, I guarantee you they call that ambulance because they have something going on in their body and they need it to be fixed. But so many times, if you have people that have a mental problem, that's when they say pray about it. And if you go to somebody to get help for that, you're viewed as crazy or out of your mind. But it's the same. You're dealing with the same issue. You have a mental issue or a physical issue. If somebody can help you in that, man, please take that help.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there's a stigma that's related to therapy because the brain, maybe we don't know as much about. And if it's a mental issue, it's not as widely accepted as something that's wrong with your heart.
Or they want to tell you, Man, that's a demonic spirit.
I actually believe that there are a lot of things that we ascribe psycho um psychology to, a mental issue that very well may be a spiritual issue.
Agreed.
And I think that they can overlap each other, and to just call it one thing and not the other. So if I only say that it's a psychology issue without considering it being spiritual, I think that I'm doing a disservice. If I consider it a spiritual issue without considering it a psychology issue, then I'm also doing it a disservice as well.
I would agree. I've been through many, many years of therapy to deal with some of the trauma that I had at a very young age. And I believe if that, like we've talked about this, trauma that is not transformed is trauma that's transferred. So what we do is take this trauma and pass it to our kids, and they have to deal with it. And so you have to dig deep, and you need somebody that can help you dig in that area.
Pull that
They can
out.
pull. And I'm not saying everybody needs that. I'm just saying I think if you're at that point, because I've dealt with suicide. I've dealt with a lot of different things that I needed to get regulated in and to learn how to deal with it besides being medicated. And I'm not, if people are on medicine, man, I would definitely recommend you continue on that until you get to a point where you feel comfortable to get off of it. Don't just decide I'm done.
How about you and the doctor together?
That would be very, very
Because you can
smart.
decide for yourself, like, I'm good,
Man, it's straight. I'm good. And you're not good.
but you're not good.
But you're not good. You're correct. And I think that so many times that it is taken out of context that therapy is a witch doctor or something of that nature, more of than it's really the training of the mind.
You use the word trauma, which is always or often associated with therapy. Would you agree that, especially as men, and I'm not discounting what women go through by any stretch of the imagination, but as men, we don't even realize that some things that we grew up with or we experienced was traumatic, that it was trauma, and that, again, because there's um this bravado that we're supposed to have, this strength that we're supposed to display and show, that we didn't deal with it. We didn't realize that we were traumatized by it. And so we kind of tucked it away in our mind, and we found other ways to cope with it.
Um, I I would call that what I did was compartmentalize. I would compartmentalize everything and put this, okay, my parents commit suicide. Okay, that goes in one box. Uh, and there's all these different boxes, but every now and then that box would get opened and something would trigger it. And I would feel those feelings and I didn't know how to address them. And most of the time it felt like I was in a dark hole. When I could feel when I started, I would call it spinning. It felt like, okay, I'm anxiety starting. I can feel it starting to bubble up. And I knew the next thing was depression. And the only way that I've really learned how to deal with those two things is by talking about stuff, is not hiding it, finding somebody that you can talk to. And if it isn't a licensed therapist, have a friend or somebody
That you trust.
that you trust and you can sit down and talk to. Because when you bottle that stuff up, it's coming back to see you. And don't get me wrong, there's still days I'll call you and say, hey, man, my anxiety is on
Yep.
100 and I don't know why, but all I need to do is talk. And and somebody doesn't have to really even talk back to you. All you're trying to do is process this stuff as you're talking.
and I've said this before, it's not just you. And there are several people who come to me for whatever reason, and I often get content from people that I'm told that they haven't or wouldn't share with anyone else. And I don't take that lightly. And even though if I'm being very honest about it, sometimes, like I said earlier, when like, MJ, let me holler at you, or can I talk to you? Sometimes I'm like, no. But I always consider, what if I am the last line of defense or the first line of defense? So if you trust me enough to bring this information to me, for me to be dismissive to you, what if I'm the last place you felt like you could go to? Maybe you tried to talk to somebody else, or you wanted to talk to somebody else and they didn't have the time, or they did dismiss you. So I know I can holler at MJ. And I'm like, hey, bro, I really ain't trying to hear that foolishness today. And that pushes you further off, right? Or I'm the first line of defense and I had the opportunity to get you back on track. Like, and I may not have the answers. It may just be listening and allowing you to get it off your chest. And so that kept you from the spiraling out of control because nobody didn't want to hear it.
And, that's why I would say people should try to build a pretty, not big, but have few people in their network that they really trust. Because man, if MJ can't get, you gotta have more than one that you can work with, because there's times when, hey, I ain't available.
Just on life. Like,
It's
life is life,
just
and I'm
exactly,
busy.
exactly.
I just drove for 10 hours
I gotta sleep.
and I was up for another 4 because I was being a dad, or I was being a
Hmm.
husband, and I'm tired.
So what you do is you build you a network of people.
I agree with that.